Okay, part two. Just getting coffeeed up here. So, based off of the lecture videos, I just wanted to make a quick video about some of the key takeaways. I want to talk a little bit about social issues, why capitalism is really good, and I also wanted to talk about other social issues in terms of egalitarians and Republicans and why there's a little bit of pushback to regulate certain things. So overall, libertarians do get a bad rap. They do tend to have a stereotype that says, you guys are heartless jerks. Social issues don't matter to you. You don't care about the poor. You don't care about the hungry. You only care about building wealth, making your own money, and staying in a corner and keeping it all for yourself. And essentially, that's kind of true, but it's kind of not true. Excuse me. So the fundamental belief of libertarians, they do believe that taxes are seen as theft. They feel that the government has no right to take what's their property. I've earned it. I've obtained it. I willfully obtained it. I worked hard. It's mine. It belongs to me, and you shouldn't be allowed to take it. So when it comes to morality, a lot of libertarians, most libertarians believe that it is not the government's place to government morality. So in terms of social issues like welfare, there's no such thing as a free lunch to a libertarian. They also talk a lot about how you can't vote based on like a majority rules kind of mentality, because that does violate the basic rule of those absolute freedoms, the fundamental right that this is my property. It's a fundamental right to libertarians, and taking it away is a violation of that right. That's considered theft. So again, when it comes to social issues, there isn't just one approach libertarians feel to solve a lot of these social issues. There is a little bit of a mindset like, well, why am I being legally forced to care about these things? And it, again, like, it's not governed by morality. The government isn't supposed to decide what's morally correct for you or for other people, right? Like, you are your own self and someone else is of their own self. So if I want to be a racist asshole, technically the government shouldn't be able to tell me that I can't be. Is it morally correct to be that way? Absolutely not. And by no means am I saying that it is. However, libertarians would argue that is not the government's place to regulate that, to even really talk about that, to comment about that, and certainly not enforce you to do certain things or abide by certain rules based on those moral standards. So I loved what you said again about at what point do I stop becoming responsible for someone else? And libertarians do feel that if I'm not the creator of your suffering, why should I be responsible for fixing it? So it's kind of like that idea of my brother's keeper. Why am I responsible to better someone else's life? I don't know them. I may never know them. I don't care about them, right? Because we're all selfish. We're all individual. We're all isolated. And the most important absolute fundamental of libertarianism is the acquiring of property. So this is my property. Why do I have to share it with you? Why do I have to pay for you to benefit in a way that doesn't benefit me, right? It's that reciprocity, that moral cannibalism. I shouldn't be able to gut you like a fish, and you shouldn't be able to gut me like a fish. You do you, and I do me. Talking a little bit about war and how libertarians feel about war. They would say that war is only okay if you are directly defending yourself. So, like, if Iraq bombed us or China bombed us, we are now able to go and participate in a war or initiate a war with China or whoever because they attacked us first. So again, I know reciprocity wasn't really mentioned in there, but I feel there's a lot of correlation as far as the mindset goes. It's like, if you do that, then I do this. And if you can't do that, then I can't do that either. As far as terrorism goes, they do tend to feel that the whole terrorist concept kind of exists and is the issue that it is today in the Middle East because the US was unwelcomed and went there. And that it's almost like a consequence or a result of the US's interference in the Middle East, which I kind of agree with, but don't tell anybody. As far as immigration goes, I apologize. I am on my patio and there's a loud car. Sorry. So they do believe that immigration is actually good for the economy. They do believe that immigration should be open to others. I do apologize again about the loud dumpster. So they do believe that immigration is open and that it's actually good for the economy to bring people in, to allow them to become citizens, to spend their money, to earn money. All of this feeds into a positive economy. They do believe, like, within reason. And I actually heard something on CNN this morning. They were talking just briefly about immigration and how Biden is kind of gonna come into play with that. I don't watch the news a whole lot, and I try to watch multiple different news mediums if I can. But overall, they were saying that Biden is going to tend to be a little bit more loose with immigration, and a lot of people are really worried that that'll actually be really bad for our economy. But libertarians would argue that that will actually stimulate our economy as long as they're coming here honestly and they're working, they're becoming a citizen, they're doing their part, they're kind of adapting to those principles of trying to earn and obtain property, paying I don't want to say paying taxes because libertarians don't really believe in paying taxes, but they're able to come here, acquire property, and contribute to the economy, and that'll actually be better for the economy. In terms of affirmative action, they don't believe in it. They don't believe that any private company should be able to hire based on certain practices. If they feel like this person's qualified, then that person's qualified, and that we don't favor one culture over the other. Even if morally that may be the right thing to do for that company, they feel because that private company is their own private company and that's their property, they feel that they should have the right to decide and discriminate if they want to. Because again, morality isn't what's on the table. That's not what's being argued. The argument is, should the government be able to regulate what's moral? Libertarians would say, no, that's their property, that's their company. If they want to be homophobic, racist assholes, that's their choice to make. So I also thought that was really interesting. As far as education goes, no public education, no free college education, no such thing as a free lunch, right? You did note that some libertarians believe that K through 12 is okay, but they also, I actually really loved what you talked about foreign language in K through 12, and how libertarians would actually say that you shouldn't be able to promote one culture over the other, right? Like, you're doing you, I'm doing me kind of thing. And like, the school is owned, it's its own property, it's owned by the school, it owns itself, and they shouldn't be able to promote a Latino culture or a Black culture or a white culture over the other. So I actually found that really interesting as well, that libertarians actually kind of believe that. Again, is it morally or culturally the most responsible way to look at things? Maybe not. And lastly, in terms of hate speech, they actually believe, I'm gonna move inside just for a second. I apologize. Oh, okay, I think we're done. Sorry. I was trying to be out here to be more quiet because my husband's working and it's actually a lot louder. So I'm very, very sorry. As far as hate speech goes, they do believe in complete freedom of speech, right? You're in control of yourself. You do whatever you want. If you want to say, you know, whatever, I don't even want to say something out loud. Someone might think I'm serious, but hate speech is allowed. If I have the freedom to say what I want, then you should have the freedom to be able to say what you want to, and vice versa. Again, is it nice or morally correct? No. But that's not what's on the table. Libertarians believe government doesn't regulate or even take that into consideration because it's not their job. So why capitalism? Why do libertarians believe that capitalism is the way, the truth, the life, as we say it in the church? So they do believe that capitalism is the only true democratic government, that you are of your own will, that we engage in those goods and services. And if you have the will and the means to acquire, you have the desire, you're working hard, that you have the right to go obtain that property, and the government shouldn't be regulated. Very, 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 very loose market, right? They feel that growth, production, and innovation is like the platform and the mantra. Like, if I could wave a flag, that's their flag. And they're all about stimulating growth of the economy, right? Producing wealth, stimulating the economy, keeping more of what's yours. This belongs to you. This is your property. And they actually believe that this way of life actually creates opportunity for more people. It becomes open and available to everyone, and that you actually are able to achieve your maximum interpersonal freedom. So, in terms of talking about, but doesn't capitalism separate the really rich from the really poor? Libertarians would argue no. They actually are able to reach their fullest potential, to have the maximum amount of ownership, to have the maximum amount of money, the maximum amount of resources, to have the most free life. They can live selfishly and benefit themselves. And I know it kind of sounds like a really selfish way to live, but this is just the libertarianism fundamentals. This is truly what they believe, that you will be able to reach your maximum fullest potential of your own interpersonal freedom, to obtain property, to build wealth, to just have an overall the good life, more than any other system of government can. So I found that really interesting. The last little thing I wanted to talk about was egalitarianism, and how there's a lot of restrictions on social issues, and how the Democrats and Republicans are actually way more similar than a lot of people think. And I totally agree with you on that. There really isn't much of a difference, although my parents think that night and day. So the Democratic Party also restricts based on religion. And I would actually say that religion is probably the biggest motivator, or even, I guess a better word would be inhibitor, of how people feel about social issues in the Democratic and Republican Party, for sure. So I wrote this down: USA equals Christian. And it really is true. We are a very Judeo-Christian based society. Our founding fathers were, from what I hear, obviously I didn't meet them, but we have a lot of Christian, Judeo-Christian fundamentals built into our democracy and into our constitution, into our laws, things like that. So America has its own system, its culture, its own way of life. They feel that if you are coming, libertarians feel this, if you are coming into our country, that you are going to be part of our country, part of those. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm not talking about libertarians. I'm talking about egalitarians. I would even say a lot of Republicans more so. This is just my argument, but Republicans more so would say that you have to adapt to our way of life, our values, our culture, and you can't just come here for a good job. And I feel this way about California. We obviously have a lot of undocumented. I'm not trying to sound like an insensitive asshole, because I'm really not like that. I am a Christian, but we do have a huge population out here of undocumented Hispanics from Mexico, and a lot of Democrats and Republicans believe that if you're coming here and you're adopting to our culture, you're agreeing that you want to be a citizen of the United States. And we have a way that we do things, okay? And we value our Christian culture. That was kind of like my biggest takeaway from that. And it's interesting that you talked about how a lot of people are feeling like that's actually being threatened, and why some Republicans and even some Democrats, like you said, Obama, things like that. I would argue that most Republicans are really against immigration because they feel threatened in that way. And like almost every Trump protester video that I've watched, I actually, on my phone, I follow this Instagram account, and it's hilarious. These guys go, and they're obviously liberals, but they go and they interview these Trump supporters, and they say like, oh, why are you against it? And like they kind of put them on the spot at these rallies and these protests. And these people, honest to God, are like, not even just like they're, diehard Trump fans, but even more so, like they feel so threatened by the other side taking away what's theirs. Like this is we're a God-fearing nation, and their socialism's trying to take that from us, and all these different things. And so I really loved in the lecture that you touched on how a lot of times egalitarians are resistant towards some of those changes, like gay marriage, and obviously it all stems from religion, but I also think a lot of it feels threatened. We don't tend to like or agree with people who don't think like us, who do things differently. And I've tried to explain that to my parents for years, and some people just really don't understand it. So anyway, going back, they're not always homophobic, racist assholes. A lot of times it truly is just a religious preference usually a religious motivator there. I know Joe Biden is even a man of God as well. But as far as culture is concerned, in terms of immigration, things like that, that is a part of culture in itself. And I liked also that you said that white Europeans shouldn't always be the only focus, or I'm sorry, the only influence in immigration, that we do need to include other cultures as well. And so I think as far as those religious and cultural values, I think a lot of people who are faith-based egalitarians, whether that be Democrat, Republican, or maybe even somewhere in between, maybe even the moderates, they're really striving to preserve that American way of life. We're trying to really encourage and promote and hold on to, some people for dear life are holding on to these white Christian American values. My husband's behind me watching me. That's funny. I'm sure he says hi. But ideally, a lot of egalitarians would argue that we need to adopt those American values, right? That a healthy society is a cohesive society. And my heart feels that. My mind understands that that's not always possible. And it's usually not always the case, sadly. It's never, I think I had talked to you about this. We emailed a little bit back and forth, but it's never my place as a Christian Republican, although I do identify as a moderate. I tend to try to not identify either way, but, as a white Christian woman who tends to be a little more conservative, I don't ever feel it's my place to create an environment based on what my religion tells me that would make other people feel uncomfortable or impose on them. So it's interesting to learn, like, from a Republican and a Democrat perspective, where they're coming from. I feel that even if we're looking back at like libertarians and the difference between the three of them, I think my biggest takeaway is like, I feel kind of saddened about like what we're learning about and about kind of like where our world has gone. And I think saying to somebody that you have to come and be like me and adapt to my culture and my American way of life, I believe that if they're going to come here, they need to come here honestly. And I do believe that they need to pay taxes. And I do believe that they need to get citizenship. If that's something, if they want to live here, that is a responsibility that unfortunately all of us have to do. We all have to pay taxes. Libertarians say we shouldn't have to, but that's just not the world that we live in. Our culture, our society, our country, our government. I pay 3 sets of taxes here. I pay federal, state, and city. I worked in the city of LA. I paid LA city taxes as well. And I think Chicago even has city of Chicago taxes if you work there. So all around, I would say my key takeaways were, I'm actually a little sad. I feel like a lot of it's really cynical. And, I have a lot of hope for the future and a lot of hope for the world, but it's absurd, in my opinion, for Republicans or Democrats, Christians, like whatever. It's never okay to say that we're going to make government and make laws based off of my preference, what I'm used to. And I hate to be so blunt with it, but a lot of the protests that I'm seeing of like these Trump rallies and these diehard fans are, it's not to say that they're uneducated. I'm not saying that, but it's like, it's such a weird, basic, a strange way of thinking for me, that to have no concept of political theory and what these buzzwords and socialism and all this stuff mean. A lot of times they don't even know what it means. I feel like I'm going off on a soapbox, but my whole point is, I don't think it's ever okay, based off of what I believe religiously, to ever impose that on other people. But from an egalitarian perspective, that is why usually the religious motivator is kind of like the underlying cause of why a lot of these social issues get tackled and approached the way that they do. But again, circling back to libertarians, they believe in complete separation of church and state. And I know you said we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but overall, I'm a little sad. So not to say I didn't enjoy the lecture, I did, but I was a little bummed out. It's kind of hard to see, sorry, another car. It's kind of hard to see how our culture has just really began to polarize, and it's like truly black and white. And I think more people need to live in the gray. And I think if more people start to understand what a lot of these things mean and understand why people believe the way that they do, and the foundations and understandings of each political party, and then the mixture of all of those things, I think there would be a lot less polarity. Things would be a little bit more calm. And I'm looking forward to kind of diving into it a little bit more. So those are my takeaways. Those are my lecture notes. Got lots of them, but looking forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks.